So lovely to do this class. It's really become something I look forward to, and it's nice to see some of you recognize your names and faces. Those of you who are new, I'm calling in. I'm doing this from just outside Jerusalem, a place called Beit Zayit, a little village, Moshav. It's nice if you ever want to come visit. It's very pretty. This class is based on many years of me living deeply with the calendar and being very deeply inspired by books like Rabbi Jill Hammer's Book of Days and Melinda Ribner's Kabbalah Month by Month. Eventually, on my journey, wanting to, go into the original sources for myself and kind of see what I found there. And this is some of the fruit from that journey. So, Julie mentioned my website, and I do want to say one thing about that, which is relevant, because this is a class about Kislev, and some of you may be thinking this is going to be about Hanukkah. And actually, because Hanukkah comes at the end of the month, and because there's so much else to talk about Kislev, I'm actually not going to touch on Hanukkah. But what I wanted to share is I'm doing another free online class about the Kabbalistic and the spiritual work of Hanukkah, and that's what I want to share with you. It's a link I'm going to put in the chat right now. You're invited to check it out. It's free, it's for everyone, and there you'll also get a taste of the kind of teaching I do generally. So with that said, let's open the source sheet. I'm going to share my screen, so don't worry if you don't have it available, and let's begin looking through what we do have to talk about Kislev, which you'll see is plenty. And as always, I'll come back to you all for comments and questions in between sources, and feel free to put things in the chat. So as often in our classes, for those of you who've been before, we look at a passage from Sefer Yetzirah. And Sefer Yetzirah is a very old and very mysterious work of Jewish mysticism. Actually, it's the earliest work of Jewish mysticism that we have. Tradition associates it even with Abraham. It's that ancient in its presentation, although academics think it may have been written in more like the 5th or 6th century. Either way, we know it's the oldest we have, and it tells us just a little mysterious something about each of our months of the calendar, and it associates each month of the calendar with a letter of the alphabet, with a human activity such as eating, or a human emotion such as anger, and we'll see what it is for our month, and also what else comes up. So reading from the source, Sefer Yetzirah 5:9, he, that's the divine, made the letter Samach, that's the letter of our month, Samach, king over sleep. So sleep is the quality of our month, the human activity of our month. And he bound a crown to it, and he combined one with another, and with them he formed Sagittarius in the universe, that's the constellation of our month, Kislev in the year, and the stomach in the soul, male and female. Now, we could easily do a whole class, we could do a whole course on like all the different elements of this passage. We're not going to do that. We're not going to go into each one in huge depth, but just say, yes, each month relates to a constellation, and also to a place in the body, also an organ in the body, which, both of which are fascinating matters themselves. So we're going to deal just a little bit with this business of the Hebrew letter of Samach and this quality of sleep. That's what we're going to spend most of the class exploring, and how it relates to this time. Just on a very, simple surface level, in the Northern Hemisphere, where all of our texts are written on the assumption that people are, in the land of Israel and other places like that, Northern Hemisphere. Of course, Kislev is the winter, right? It's going into the dead of winter, which is, of course, significant for Hanukkah also. And just on the level that animals around us are hibernating, and that snow may be falling in this month, which will cause not only animals, but the entire ecosystem we're in to enter a form of hibernation. There's something beautiful about how the calendar is asking us to pay attention to that and to be in tune with that. And to put it bluntly, I encourage you to consider giving yourself as much sleep as you actually need this month. And we're going to talk more about that as we go on in the class. So let's see. First, Hasidic source we're going to look at, which was Rav Sadok Cohen. So he's a great Hasidic master who translates Kabbalistic and other ideas from our tradition in a language that is often very modern. He died in 1900, and he really has this amazing ability to put it in terms that often really speak nicely to us. So he says, every month has its own work. It's interesting. The Hebrew is esek. Usually, our texts will talk about avodah, like a kind of holy work or service. But he's saying like it's saying this is what we're supposed to be busy with this month, and was created with a particular letter from the 12 simple ones, as is written in Sefer Yetzirah, Samach over sleep, Kislev in the year, and the stomach in the soul. So he's just quoting what we saw above in abridged form, saying that this is a letter and the quality of our month. And as the Talmud teaches, the stomach brings sleep. So it's another nice connection in the Talmud between the part of the body for a month, the stomach, and the quality of sleep. And I'm sure we've all had the experience in our lives of, having a nicely full belly and not leading us to be sleepy. The letter Samach refers to the eternal supports all the fallen ones. Now, I'll just say a word about that. Some of you may have been in the last class, you may remember this, but it's fine if you weren't, and this is new. The previous month that we just finished, Cheshvan, the letter for that month is Nun. And the Talmud talks about how in one of our famous prayers called the Ashrei, Psalm 145, which is the psalm being quoted here, it's an acrostic where every letter of the alphabet is represented in order except the Nun. And the Talmud says, and he's alluding to it here, that it's kind of okay that Nun is missing, because Nun alludes to something falling, because the Nun is the first letter of the Hebrew word for falling, for nafal. It's okay that that's missing from Ashrei, because we don't want to talk about falling. And anyway, the Talmud says, the next letter, which is there after the Nun, is the Samach, which in the Ashrei is this verse, the eternal supports all the fallen ones. In the Hebrew, it's Somech Hashem L'chol Hanoflim. So the word Somech is supporting, and it's beginning with our letter for Samach. So our letter Samach kind of supports and raises up what's been lacking or fallen before, essentially. It elevates what was missing before. And he's going to tell us something else beautiful about that Samach now. The first Samach in the Torah is in the word surrounding. Now, the first anything in the Torah is an important thing to pay attention to. The first time a letter appears, the first time a word appears, it's a principle the Kabbalists take very seriously. We have to look at that to understand its deeper meaning. So the first time our letter of our month, this Samach, appears in the Torah is in the word surrounding, sovev. And that is really, really interesting, because as he's going to say in a second, the shape of our letter is that which surrounds. It's a circle. Right? So let's read more what he says. Surrounding refers to God surrounding everything and the transcendent light through which God supports all the fallen. So this or makif, as the Kabbalists call it, is not the divine in this world, right? The divine for the Kabbalists fills everything in this world, but also surrounds this world. God is both immanent and transcendent. That's the principle of panentheism. Not pantheism, as is the more common term people sometimes confuse it for. Pantheism is God is just what's down here. Panentheism is God's what's down here and what is above or beyond. So the Samach symbolizes that which is beyond, that which is transcendent, that which is surrounding any dimension or world that we can imagine or have any kind of access to. God is bigger than that. The divine is surrounding that. And as he says, the image of the letter Samach is a circle, as we said. So the letter Samach conjures all of these layers of meaning of the divine surrounding our whole world and our whole existence, and also of that supporting that we mentioned before. And just turning over the page, the last little bit of the source. This is the work of this month, to stubbornly trust that the blessed God will guard and help you, even if you have acted destructively, God forbid. You can fix everything through teshuvah. So how does that relate to what came before? If we take seriously the idea that bigger than anything we can have access to, bigger than anything we can understand or know about, there's an infinite divine loving creator above and beyond that's supporting, that's holding everything. There's a source of life bigger than we can imagine, and it's surrounding just like that Samach. So that principle of that loving creator and the possibility of returning, Teshuvah is lovingly returning to our best selves and returning to the divine. The principle we can always go back is intact, no matter what, no matter how broken we are, no matter how broken the world is. there's always that supportive outer frame of that circle of the samach. Let me just come back to all of you and just hear if anyone wants to jump in with any comments, questions, or insights on any of that. Oh, I see a few things on the chat. Ellen says stomach and sleep, postprandial fatigue. Exactly. There's something that is a little off topic. I'm not going to go into how the holidays work on space. That's a whole other subject. I'm sorry. That's going to take us way off course. So great. Okay. I see those. Does anyone else want to ask or say anything about what we already covered? The samach, and what we discussed relating to it? Or make any comments? Feel free. Otherwise, we will dive into sleep. We'll dive into discussing sleep. Great. Okay, let's do it. Just checking. Right. Good. Okay. So I'm going to share my screen again. And this is the topic that will take up most of the rest of the class. The discussion of what sleep is in our tradition. But first, as I put in these little notes in brackets here, what is sleep for us today? The US Centers for Disease Control and Prevention reported in 2015 that 35% of US adults suffer from sleep deprivation, which causes a wide array of potentially serious physiological and psychological ailments. I think 35% is very generously low. I think 35% is way conservative with a small c, right? On that number. Just judging, I mean, I happen to be in a certain demographic that know a lot of people not getting enough sleep, but still, I think there's a problem in our society generally that we're not giving ourselves enough sleep. And I see this a lot in people of different ages that I work with. So just throwing out there that if anyone's struggling with this, you're certainly not alone or unusual. This is a very common thing. And even some of us who may think that, well, maybe we could get a bit more sleep, but we do okay. I just want to have in mind the question: are we really getting enough to be really honoring our full selves? Are we really giving our body the rest it needs to be of optimal health and to live the full life that we want to live? So just want that to be in the background. So Genesis Rabbah, ancient Midrash, says, when the Blessed Holy One created the first human, the ministering angels erred. They made a mistake because of him. And they sought to say before him, holy, meaning they sought to pray to Adam. They thought Adam was God. They were gonna say to Adam, wow, you're so great. What did the Blessed Holy One do? He caused a deep sleep to fall upon him. Then everyone knew that he was human. So let me come back to you all, because I love this midrash so much. Right? Before I tell you what I think it means, I'd love to hear from you all. Does anyone want to have a go at saying what they think it means? There's no one answer. I'd love to hear from you. Feel free to put it on the chat or just wave your hand and we'll try and unmute you. Oh, yeah, I see Anita. May I unmute you?
Yeah, one of the Psalms refers to Hashem as never sleeps or slumbers.
Mm-hmm.
And so if man were put to sleep, then clearly he couldn't be the Almighty.
Beautiful. And this is for Anita or also anyone else. What does that mean about our relationship to sleep? What does that mean that sleep is for people? Not the totality of it, but what does that say about our relationship to it? Anyone want to jump in on that? Oh, I see some things on the chat. Let's see. Sleep is 1/60th of death. Brilliant. That's a source I think we're going to look at in the class. So death. So sleep would represent death, would be a human thing. Beautiful. So sleep. Okay, that's great. And we are going to come back to that. That's great, Carolyn. Thank you. Elaine says, in a certain way, I love how sleep and the time of darkness, Kislev, are paired. Nature is reflected in our sense of time. Beautifully put, Elaine. I love that. Yes. Richard, sleep is a dependency to Hashem. Love it. Yes. Brilliant, right? It's the way that we are dependent. We need something. Oh, Anita said that. Brilliant. We need sleep. Elaine says, as Shabbat is to the week, sleep is to our overall life. Maybe it is the closest we get. Good. Cheryl says we do value dreams. Yeah. Elaine says get to God outside of Shabbat. Oh, that's the end of, okay. Maybe it is the closest thing we get to God outside of Shabbat. Beautiful. Oh yeah, we're going to discuss that together. Julie, the Psalm Anita was referring to. Beautiful. Yeah, Psalm 121. Yeah, behold, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. That line you were mentioning. Brilliant. Okay, a lot of great comments there. So I love a lot of what people said there. So especially when I come back to this thing about that Carolyn mentioned about death, and also this idea that Richard mentioned about dependency, and also what Anita said about how we need it. So it's a limitation, right? Like, so I'm sure we've all had the thought at least one time in our life, maybe when we were much younger, but maybe not, like, oh, wouldn't it be great if people didn't need to sleep, or if I didn't need to sleep, or for that matter, if there were 20 of me, because then I'd just get so much done, right? Wouldn't that be great, right? But that's just the way it is, right? For all of our technology, we've made like such incredible strides forward with so much, healing and medicine, but we still need to sleep, right? And I don't know how long that's going to continue to be the case, but for now, at least, that's the human condition, and it's a limitation. But it's also, as was said, I think it was Elaine, it's also an opportunity to elevate. As Elaine said, maybe it's an opportunity to get close to God. So we're going to look at it from both sides. Let's go back to the sheet. The next passage from Genesis, Rabbi, about sleep. And behold, it was very good, from Genesis 1:31. This means, behold, sleep is good. So that's quite radical, because the verse is not actually talking about sleep. But the Midrash here, Genesis Rabbah, the rabbis are saying they're applying it to sleep. And the rabbis do this. They play those kind of games all the time with different things. But here it's just a kind of platform to launch a discussion to question that assumption. Is sleep really good? So this is the question. But is sleep really good? After all, have we not been taught when the wicked drink wine and sleep, it is good for them and good for the world? However, because a person sleeps a little, they are able to get up and toil greatly in Torah study. So we're seeing here the beginning of a rabbinic conversation about sleep. Sleep is great. Is sleep really great? When the wicked drink wine and sleep, it's good. Meaning, the kind of people who sleep a lot are not actually the kind of people we want to set up as role models. Sleeping is something we associate with people. We want them to be sleeping to get them out of the way so they don't make a mess of the world. But it's okay, then the last couple lines say, to sleep a little bit so you can then get up and do something worth doing. And of course, for the rabbis, the Midrash, the best thing to do is to learn Torah. So that's their model of a good activity, but it could be anything worth doing. So sleep as much as you need to, it seems to be saying, so that you can do something worthwhile. That seems to be like the pragmatic bottom line. It's interesting it gets there. That's kind of where it ends, considering where it started, which is, behold, it was very good. Right? That's very different. So we'll see. There seems to be a lot of different opinions about sleep among the rabbis, and it seems to be some of them are quite uneasy about it. Let's look at the next source. It brings up similar things. And the Eternal caused a deep sleep to fall upon the human. So that's talking about in Genesis chapter 2, when the Eternal puts Adam to sleep so that God can bring Eve out of Adam, can create Adam's soulmate. So Rabbi Yeshua of Sichnin said, in the name of Rabbi Levi, the beginning of a person's downfall is sleep. Isn't that fascinating? Because then let's think about the context of the verse. Adam has been put to sleep so his soulmate can be created. Now, okay, admittedly, Eve ate the apple and gave it to Adam, and that whole thing. True. But also, what would be the point of Adam being alone in the garden? Right? God actually says explicitly, there's only one thing that God says is not good. In the whole Torah, it's the only time God says, lo tov, not good. And that is a person being on their own, right? So what is this like very strong bias here against sleep? And let's carry on. When asleep, they do not engage in Torah or work. So this is kind of like rabbinic work ethic that sleep is counter to, right? If you're sleeping a lot, you're not doing good, productive, wholesome things. Rav said there are 3 types of deep sleep. The deep sleep of sleep, so that's essentially sleep, which is just sleep. Nothing else to say about it. The deep sleep of prophecy, little interesting, we'll come back to that. And the deep sleep of a trance, so like an altered state of consciousness where something transformative could happen. So Sleep could be just sleep, Rav is saying, right? Or it could be receiving a message from God or having a relationship with God, or it could be some other deep transformative experience, which, by the way, that's what happened to Adam, the tardema. That's the same Hebrew word. That's where Adam wakes up and finds that he's no longer alone. The rabbi said over the page, there is a fourth type, even the deep sleep of foolishness. So again, the rabbis just can't let anybody say a good thing about sleep without chipping in with their unease about it, right? They're worried about encouraging people to sleep too much, right? To have too positive an attitude towards it. But clearly, from both midrashim, it's clear there are some very good things to say about sleep, about how God said it was good, about how it's how we get to the state where Adam is not alone, about how we can receive prophecy in our sleep, we can have some other kind of transformative trance in our sleep. There's a lot of positive potential here, but also a lot of rabbinic uneasiness too. We want to hold all of these opinions. So we'll see a little more together, then I'll come back to you all for your input on this. Rabbi Hanina Bar Yitzchak said, there are 3 withered reflections. This is like, sorry for the translation, it's best I could do. There are 3 things which are like small reflections of something bigger. So you'll get the idea as we read them, we see what they are. So a withered reflection of death is sleep, as I think someone mentioned before, right? So like, meaning sleep is just like a tiny little reflection of death. A withered reflection of prophecy is dreaming. As also someone mentioned in the chat, dreaming. We value dreams very much, and there actually seem to be like a taste of prophecy. A withered reflection of the world to come is Shabbat. So again, Shabbat is a taste of the world to come. Rabbi Avin added 2 more. A withered reflection of the heavenly light is the sun. A withered reflection of the heavenly wisdom is Torah. Beautiful. So we're obviously mostly interested right now in the sleep and the dream, right? So sleep is like a tiny little reflection of death, and a dream is like a tiny reflection of prophecy. Now, let's come back together and just hear any input, any thoughts and ideas or questions people have about all that before we go on. Let's see on the chat first of all. Right. Reba, sorry, I don't know how to say that. We have disturbed our natural sleep cycles. Very, very true and important. So that's part of the reason why so many of us are sleep deprived. We don't sleep in harmony with exactly when our body would naturally want to. We're disrupting our natural cycle with so many other stimuli. Yeah, thank you for that. Anita says, many people solve problems in their sleep. Beautiful, Anita. I'm so glad you mentioned that. So that I think that relates to both the tardema, this transformative trance, and also this taste of prophecy, right? This idea that we can have like a higher consciousness, some kind of revelation in our sleep, right? Something can happen, something can shift in our sleep. I'm sure we've all had the experience of, if nothing else, going to bed angry or upset about something and waking up, and hopefully, sometimes at least, it's somewhat better, right? I know I certainly have. So yeah, that's or actually, to think about what Anita's saying, really, sometimes it's something concrete that we didn't know how to deal with, and we wake up and we know the answer, right? So our unconscious has freedom and space to do things when we're asleep that we don't give it necessarily during the day when we're more in our conscious mind, so it can solve our problems. Brilliant. Elaine says the light was created after darkness. Both are creations of God. Beautiful, beautiful, Elaine. Exactly. And both are essential and both instruct the other. We learn from the contrast. Exactly. Cheryl says back to the samach. Samach as a shape of a shield is the shape of a shield and a helpful image for me as protection, refuge, and also perhaps representing our identity like the symbols on a coat of arms. Beautiful. I really like that, Cheryl. So I think that relates to that idea that samach is that which supports, right? That which holds up and supports. Beautiful. Marilyn says, you may remember something in your sleep that you didn't know when you were awake. Exactly. Beautiful, Marilyn. Michael says, did the rabbis comment on sleep as part of the rhythm of life, as part of the natural state of things? The closest they get that I've seen is that first midrash we saw, which was saying that it's this inherent thing that it's innate, that humans need it, it's part of the human condition that we just have to sleep. So it's part of the natural cycle of things for us anyway. I haven't seen anything else beyond that about it. Steve said, on the topic of sleep, any difference between the body and the soul. Yes, good. That's exactly what we're getting to next, Steve. Very good. Actually, so that's in the next source. So we'll come back to that in a second. Let me just read what else is on the chat. This is great stuff. Carolyn says, sometimes I have amazing creative ideas when I'm sleeping or dreaming. I keep a pad of paper at my bedside. Wonderful practice. I very much recommend that. That's really great. Just the act of putting writing implement and something to write on next to the bed, and even if you only use it very occasionally, sends the message to your unconscious that you are listening and paying attention to it, and that anything it gives you, you will record, which then opens it to give you more. So that's something I really recommend. That's brilliant. Thank you for that, Carolyn. Anna says, my dad refers to sleep as the dishwasher of the brain. Oh, I like that. Maybe you shouldn't get the plates, your brain, dirty during the day, but if you do, then you should respect them by cleaning them. Love that. Ellen, dreams are where opposites can exist. The mind can transcend reality and sleep. Brilliant. And again, we're going to see a source actually that's about that. That's great. Elaine says, love your comment. Anna says, I love your dad's analogy. Brilliant. Okay, that was a lot of wonderful things. So let's go to where I said we're going to go. We're going to go to what happens to us according to the rabbis, according to tradition, when we sleep, in terms of, all the different parts of us as people. So again, I'll share my screen. We'll look at the next source. Right from the Talmud. The first tractate, the first book of the Talmud is called Brachot, and it's all about prayers. And this is, as you'll see, talking about what the prayers which are said traditionally before we go to sleep. So one who enters to sleep on their bed recites the first paragraph of the Shema. And just a quick plug for my Jewish learning. As I haven't seen it, but as usual, I assume and trust they probably have a great article if you want to find out more about this, about like the bedtime Shema, right? They're very, very good at that. Julie, is that probably true? She's checking. Yeah, she's nodding.
Definitely good. True. I'll put a link in the chat box.
Thank you. Awesome. Okay. So if you want to know more about like the ritual that this source leads to in practice and other things about it, it's a great place to look. Okay, so one who enters to sleep on their bed recites the first paragraph of the Shema. Then they recite, blessed are you, God, cosmic majesty, and so on, who makes the bonds of sleep fall upon my eyes and slumber upon my eyelids, and illuminates the pupil of the eye. May it be your will, O eternal my God, that you make me lie down in peace and give me my portion in your Torah. Accustom me to mitzvot, to positive deeds, and do not accustom me to transgression. Lead me not into error, nor into iniquity, nor into temptation, nor into disgrace. May the good inclination have dominion over me, and may the evil inclination not have dominion over me. Save me from an evil mishap and evil diseases. Let neither bad dreams nor troubling thoughts disturb me. May my bed be flawless before you. Enlighten my eyes in the morning, lest I sleep the sleep of death. Blessed are you, O Eternal, who gives light to the whole world in his glory. Wow, it's really beautiful, even in English. I think the Hebrew, for those of us who are privileged to be able to work with the Hebrew, is even more. But even the English is very moving. So let's come back together. I'd love to hear from you all about what that's bringing up to you. Maybe I'll just give us like another moment with it. Maybe I'll just summarize it again because it is a little bit long and dense. And then I'd love to hear what you all think of that. So the first bit, who makes the bond of sleep fall upon my eyes and slumber on my eyelids, who illuminates the pupil of the eye. Right, and this is after the Shema. When we say the first paragraph of Shema, then we say that. Then the second bit, may it be your will that I'll lie down in peace. Give me my portion in the Torah. Accustom me to good deeds, not to sin. Don't lead me into anything bad. And then finally, may the good inclination have dominion over me, not the bad one. Save me from anything bad happening to me. No bad dreams, no bad thoughts. May my bed be flawless. Enlighten my eyes in the morning, lest I sleep the sleep of death. And then this final blessing, blessed are you, eternal, Baruch Hashem, who gives light to the whole world in his glory. So let's come back together and hear what that brought up for people. I think it's fascinating. Feel free to jump in on the chat or wave your hand. Anita, I'll unmute you. Go for it. Oh, wait, did that work? Let me try again. Sorry, you're still not. There you go. Right.
I'm just thinking that's so great. Maybe if I add that after my Shema at night, maybe I'll be able to sleep through the night.
Maybe, right? It's very powerful, isn't it?
It's
Yeah,
worth trying.
certainly worth trying. You'd be in very good company also. Thank you for that. If anyone else wants to wave and unmute, please do. Otherwise, I'm going to start reading through the wonderful things I see here already on the chat. So, right. First of all, Marilyn, is God the same as God? Yes. God with a dash, or God with an exclamation mark, or God with an O. It's all just different ways of saying the infinite, which we can't really say. Like in Hebrew, we say Hashem, the name, to show that like we can't really even give God a name. So we just, anything you call God is just a name for something we can't name. So yeah, God with a dash, or God with an exclamation mark, or God with anything else. Elaine says, so sleep is the training ground for life in the day. I love that. That is a really beautiful way of putting it. That's one of the things that jumps out at me too from this beautiful prayer is you might think that sleep is just time off, right? You might think like during the day, I have to try and be a good person, do good things. And, it's important what I think and say and do. But when I'm sleeping, go and give me a break, right? Who cares? Like I'm not on the clock. No one's watching. It doesn't matter. But actually, as Elaine, I think really articulates it beautifully here, apparently it does matter. Like we're asking for a lot of help as if it really is very important for what happens while we're sleeping. Like what? Why does it matter? And actually, I love the suggestion Elaine's giving us here, right? Maybe what happens during the night helps to mold us, helps to shape us, right? Helps to build who we are, which then obviously affects the people that we are during the day. So I think that's spot on. Let's see what else you wrote. Ken says, sleep leads to tranquility, right? There's this beautiful aspiration, request. It's beautiful yearning for tranquility in the prayer, right? There's this beautiful, like, please let my sleep have these qualities that we want it to. And as I'm sure we've all experienced in our lives, when we are not given the privilege of sound, tranquil sleep, it can be a tremendous source of suffering ultimately, if we're deprived of that for a long time. So yeah, we yearn for that. We yearn for good sleep. Richard says, such an intimate sense of trust, right? There is this beautiful intimate sense of trust there. And maybe especially, Richard, because the time of going to sleep is like a time of vulnerability, right? It's a time of saying like, I'm not going to be watching the shop, right? I'm not even going to be able to defend myself physically, let alone anything else. So if there is a creator, I'm in your hands, right? It's up to you. So it's really giving ourselves over. Some of you may know in the prayer Adon Olam, we say, I place my soul into your hands, right? And that's actually also part of the bedtime liturgy, like after the Shema. So Jews do this. In every generation, someone has a great idea of like another nice thing to add to the liturgy, and that's great. But then you end up with a liturgy that's like incredibly long. So the bedtime Shema liturgy, if you look in a traditional Siddur, is like many pages long. So one of the things in it is Adon Olam. Actually, in a lot of the versions of the liturgy, it's the very last thing you say. So in Adon Olam, we end by saying, I place my soul in your hands, to the divine, with that intimate sense of trust. Michael says a strong sense of renewal, right? We're not going to sleep. We're asking that this is just a new beginning, right? This is not the end, we hope, right? We're saying, please make sure I wake up, and I'm renewed and given a new lease of life. Cheryl says, what do you think illuminates the pupil of my eye means? Is this part before sleeping, implying the value of dreaming? Beautiful. So I wasn't sure, Cheryl. I'd be interested to hear. I like your suggestion there. Maybe having your eyes illuminated, your pupil illuminated, is about inspiration while you're sleeping and dreaming. Maybe it's about saying, when I wake up, or please make it so that I will wake up. Meaning that please may it not be. Sometimes we use the language of, if somebody dies, we say their eyes have fallen into darkness. So may it be the opposite, right? May it be that we wake up with eyes which are illuminated, because that also seems to be a big theme here. If you have other suggestions for that, please put them on the chat. I'm going down, reading them all in order. Gail says, why enlighten the pupils before sleep? Right, exactly. So that's how we just discussed. Anna says, this might be totally left field, but illuminating the pupil causes it to expand. Maybe it's an oblique reference to being open to what you may experience and sleep. I love that, Anna. So I think that may be part of what's going on here with that kind of inspiration, right? And us be open to it. I love that. Gail says sleep is surrendering. I really feel that in this prayer. There's that giving over, isn't there? Ellen says, it is believed when you sleep, the neshama flies away. So asking for protection from that. Brilliant. So thank you for that, Ellen. That somebody asked before about the body and the soul. So I want to talk a little about this. So thanks for a reminder. There's an assumption in our theology, and actually we see it clearly expressed in one of our waking up prayers, which again, I'm sure My Jewish Learning have a great article about if you want to check. In our waking up prayers, we say Modeh Ani, we give thanks. So the prayer that Modeh Ani is actually taken from is called Eloheinu Shema. My God, the soul that you've given me is pure. And we say in that prayer that when we went to bed, God, you took our soul away. But now that we've woken up, you've given it back to me, right? And thank you for that. So that's the theological framework here, that the soul doesn't stay with us when we're asleep, which is fascinating because, of course, we know we are alive when we're asleep, and we know that the unconscious is doing things, but apparently the soul, whatever that means, of course, is fairly mysterious, is doing something else. It's with God, essentially, while we're doing that. As Ellen says, given that this special part of us, which is connected to God, is not completely present down here when we're sleeping, according to this theology, then we need protection. We need an extra care from the divine. Caroline says, light causes pupils to contract, so it could be shutting out the distractions of the day and life outside. Brilliant. Love that about illuminating the pupil. Anna says, whoops, Caroline, you're right. Totally got that backwards. How embarrassing. Oh, fine. Worst things have happened today. Not to worry. Eliora says, Eliora says, what about prophetic dreams? I tend to look up on my dream symbols the next morning, and some bear for foreboding. Right. So in the same part of the Talmud where this is taken from, roughly within a few pages of it, there's actually a big discussion about how dreams can be interpreted to have deep meaning in our lives. And some of the rabbis are skeptical, but it seems to be a fairly solidly accepted principle that there's something there to it. But there's also a kind of warning that often the interpretation will follow the attitude of the one giving it. There's actually a funny story about rabbis who go to dream interpreters, and basically one of them pays the interpreter and one of them doesn't pay him, and the one who pays him gets good news, and the one who doesn't pay gets bad news. So it's amusing humor, but there's also there's a recognition there of the power of it too, just also kind of warning about it. And actually the subjectivity is not just a joke, it's also a serious point. We're not going to have time to see all these texts inside, but I think this is important to mention. We have a beautiful ritual in our tradition, which is if somebody has a dream that is disturbing to them, which they feel is a bad dream, some kind of bad omen, like, something bad is going to happen because of this dream, then what that person can do is gather 3 other people who act as a kind of bet din, which is a Jewish court, right? And that bet din, that Jewish court, says to them, tell us your dream. And you tell them the dream, and then that bet din of 3 people, which has this kind of legal power and status, says it is a good dream, and they reinterpret the dream for good. They don't even have to go into the details. They just say, trust us, like, you think it's bad, but actually it's good. And because they have this power to change reality, it seemed to be a very effective and powerful ritual, and people still use this to this day. Maybe Jewish Learning might have an article about that. I don't know. They might well do. So is it, good. The morning blessings are there too. Great. Let's see. Going down the chat. Anita says Hashkivenu. Also that protection. Brilliant. So Hashkivenu is a beautiful blessing from the evening service, which asks for protection. Beautiful, in a similar vein. Elaine says Torah is often considered light. Illuminating eyes could allude to absorbing Torah into your deeper self while you are asleep. Beautiful. And by the way, you're right. Torah is often considered light, and of course, so is the divine itself. So either way. Lisa, optimistically, sleep gives God an opportunity to do a little tune-up work on us. I love that. Right, and that's we've already mentioned how sometimes we sleep and we wake up and things are a little better emotionally, or we have more wisdom or clarity or insight, that's great. Right. Susan mentions the dreams of Joseph, and also we're going to see something later on in the sheet. If we might not get there actually, but there's something there about the dreams of Pharaoh also. Steve says, did all the prophets in the Torah have their visions while dreaming? That is a fascinating question, Steve. According to Maimonides, one of our greatest rabbis and philosophers, all of the prophets except for Moses had all of their prophecies and visions while they were in some kind of dreamlike trance. Yes, but that's just Maimonides, and a lot of people disagree with him. But still, that is, it's an important perspective. And there are some visions and prophecies which are clearly, definitely, yes, in dreams. Oh, and by the way, because we might not get there again, the sheet is long, and you guys are giving me so much great stuff to work with. This is wonderful. Some of the most important dreams in the Torah, which includes some prophecies, like those of Jacob and those of Joseph that were just mentioned, they happen in the traditional Torah cycle, the one-year Torah cycle. They're read during this month of Kislev. So there's this beautiful synchronicity about sleep and dreaming coming up over and over again in the Torah reading cycle while we're in this month of sleeping and dreaming. I keep thinking you guys are going to stop and we're going to get back to the sheet, but it's fine. We'll just do this for the next 5 hours. This is wonderful. Michael says, this ritual sounds like a great thing to have for all aspects of one's life, not just dreams. I agree, Michael. Yeah. And actually, it's a pretty Jewish ritual. Judaism really embraces that principle, which sometimes we might associate with quantum or uncertainty, which is the observer changes reality, and that we can change reality by our attitude towards it. I think Judaism manifests that in a lot of ways. So that's a good example of it. Let's see, where are we up to? Julie has the link for us on everything. Amazing. Thank you, Julie. Elaine says, wait, did I skip any? No, we're good now. Good. Elaine says, you just provoked an interesting idea. There are no public prophets anymore, but maybe through sleep and dreams, we now assume the role individually. Very interesting. Beautiful, Elaine. I love that. Wow. Okay. That was good. I'm just going to take a swig. Just tea, nothing stronger. That was really, really good. We're going to do a little bit more of what's on the sheet to kind of round out our picture together. And then we'll come back together again. Thank you so much for all these wonderful comments. So next section is actually one of the dreams that is read during this period, during Kislev. I'm just thinking if that's the best use of our time to read that source. It is really, really juicy and key. Yeah, you know what? I think we should. I think that's it. And then we'll see how far we get until the hour. I think this is pretty important. Throws us a lot of great stuff for us. So Genesis 28. Jacob left Beersheba and went toward Haran, and he encountered the place, and he slept there because the sun set. He took some of the stones of the place, he put them under his head, and lay down in that place. He dreamt a ladder was set on the ground, and its top reached to the sky, and angels of God were going up and down on it. And the Eternal was standing over him, and he said, I am the Eternal, the God of your father Abraham and the God of Isaac. The ground on which you are lying I will give to you and to your offspring. Your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth, and you shall spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All the families of the earth shall bless themselves by you and your descendants. Remember, I am with you. I will protect you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, surely the Eternal is present in this place, and I did not know it. And he was in awe, and he said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the abode of God, and that is the gateway to heaven, the Shah HaShamayim. And Jacob awoke early in the morning, and he took the stone that he had put under his head, and he set it up as a pillar and poured oil on the top of it. So such a beautiful, rich story. I happen to have the privilege of learning Zohar with some wonderful teachers, and the Zohar has dozens of pages just on what we just read. It's vast, and and down through the centuries, our tradition has offered thousands of different interpretations and commentaries on what we just read. We're just going to look at a little slice of what we have, especially that which relates directly to our month's activity of sleeping and dreaming. So first of all, a little snippet from Rashi, our foremost commentator. He's doing his thing in medieval France, and due to being excellent at what he does, and also to being printed in the right place at the right time, he really becomes the number one reference, the number one commentator, both on the Torah actually and also on the Talmud. So he occupies a very special place in our tradition. So Rashi, and he's usually bringing earlier sources, like sources from the Midrash, but his selection of them and presentation of them is key. So Rashi says on this verse, surely the eternal is present in this place, and I did not know it. For if I had known, Rashi says, he has this, if I had known, I would not have slept in such a holy place as this. So Jacob says, wow, I'm in a special place, God is here. And Rashi interprets that to mean, if I had known what a special place it was, I wouldn't have slept here. Now, just so interesting that's what originally the ancient rabbis of the Midrash said, and what Rashi says, because the story itself actually subtly offers a slightly different, maybe, or contradictory, or at least some tension with that. Because let's look closely at what happened. Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, surely the eternal is present in this place, and I did not know it. And he was in awe. And he said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the abode of God, and that is the gateway to heaven. But look at what happens next. And Jacob awoke early in the morning. So actually, after Jacob said, wow, God is here and I didn't know it, this is so awesome, this is the gateway to heaven, he went back to sleep, right? Because the next line is that he awoke. So he must have been asleep. So actually, although he realized it was so awesome and God was there, he also realized that the right thing to do to connect with that God who was there was actually to sleep. And we can see a beautiful source from the Talmud now, which talks about this. So first of all, it gets there through a roundabout route. Let me just check the time. Oh, we're still good. Good. It is written, and Jacob left Beersheba and went toward Haran. And it is written thereafter, and he encountered the place, and he slept there because the sun set. So there's this mystery about the beginning of the passage we read before. I'm just going to scroll back up to it so we can experience this together. So Jacob leaves one place to go to another place, but then he encounters Vayifga b'makom. In Hebrew, Vayifga can mean he bangs into something, and makom just means a place generally. So we might think, reading it, we might think at first like, oh, he got to the place he was actually headed. But it's clear from the story and the context that he didn't. He did not get to the place he was headed. Instead, he got to just the place, a place that has no other name but place. But actually, the place, we also need to know, is one of the names for God. The rabbis say that the divine is the place which holds all of existence within it. So Jacob bangs into, just like comes up against this place. But it wasn't where he was going. He was going somewhere else. So what's going on with that? And what's it got to do with the sun setting? Let's read that verse together. And he encountered the place and he slept there because the sun set. So it's like Jacob bangs into this place, and because the sun is setting, he has to go to sleep. Right? And let's go back to the Talmud and see what they say about it. When Jacob arrived at Haran, that's the place he was trying to get to. So apparently he did get there. He said, is it possible that I passed a place where my fathers prayed and I did not pray there? When he set his mind to return, the land contracted for him, and he encountered the place. So that's the first mystery solved, according to the Midrash anyway. This is not necessarily offering us a literal historical read of what actually happened, but the Midrash is saying, Jacob got to his destination, he actually did, but then he realized he missed somewhere special, and so the land collapsed under him to bring him back to that special place. Hence, boom, Vayifga. He suddenly magically finds himself in this place. Okay, but what's that got to do with sleep? See what comes next. When he had finished praying, the Talmud continues, and he wanted to return on his way, So he gets to this magical place that is like, oh, my fathers were here, my grandfather, they were praying. I should pray too. I'm going to pray. So he finishes praying and he wants to return on his way. He wants to go back to the place where he was headed, Haran, the place he already got to and then was returned from. The Holy One, blessed be he, said, this righteous man came to my lodging place and he will depart without sleeping over? No, no, no. Immediately the sun set. So what's going on here? He's in this special place where his father prayed and his grandfather prayed, and he prayed. So you might think, game over, job done. Let the man go about his business and go to the place he was trying to get to. But God says, no, you're in such a special place. I want you to sleep over, right? And that's what we see in the text. We go back to the text and see what happens when he's sleeping there. He has this amazing, intimate vision and prophecy with the divine saying, oh, I'm with you, I'm going to protect you, I'll bring you back to this place. Prophecy about your descendants. It all happens because Jacob allows himself to be all the things that we talked about before when we talked about what sleep is: being vulnerable, right? Being open, being open to something happening that's bigger than what our conscious mind normally does. Because Jacob does that, because God forces him into it, actually, right? All of these wonderful things happen. And we just have time. Yeah, we have time for a little more. We're going to see a beautiful Hasidic interpretation of that story now from the Kedushas Levi, and then we'll come back together. I'd love to hear what you all think about this. Kedushas Levi is one of my favorite Hasidic masters. Lots of beautiful ideas, beautifully presented. So he says about this: when Jacob slept, his soul and his thoughts ascended on high, and his soul was attached to the Blessed Holy One, the root of all roots. And this is the meaning of he took some of the stones of the place. Remember Jacob, that was in the passage we read before from the Torah. He takes stones to put under his head to use as a pillow, referring to those letters which his thought is composed of. So that's a nice analogy or metaphor for us, that the stones somehow represent Jacob's thoughts, which are actually, when he's sleeping, they are going up, they're attaching to God. So remember I said before, like, you might think when you're sleeping, you're off duty, right? You're off the clock. No one cares what you do when you're asleep. Do what you want. No, our tradition says actually, you can have a relationship with the divine when you're sleeping, right? And as someone said beautifully in the chat before, it's training for what happens during the day, right? And it's continue reading this teaching. He put them in the place, meaning in the Blessed Holy One, who is called place. Remember I said before, makom, place, is also a name for God. So Jacob took the stones of the place, right? And he took the stones which represent his thoughts. That's the whole tradition in Kabbalah of why those things represent each other. But for now we just take it at face value. He takes his thoughts and he places them in the place, in the Infinite One. And this is the meaning, he continues, that he placed them above his head. Because he was asleep, his thoughts ascended into the Blessed Holy One, who is above a person's head. So again, we're reading this story about Jacob making himself vulnerable and open in this way during Kislev, right? During this time when we're being invited to think about, the role of sleep in our lives and what we can do with it. So let's come back together. I'd love to hear any thoughts or questions anybody has about any of that. As always, put it on the chat or wave. Let's see what's there already. Steve says, staying up all night on Shavuot, the day commemorating receiving the Torah, and staying up all night to learn and not sleep. Yeah, Steve, the story about that I've heard is that we do that as a tikkun, as a fixing, because the Midrash says that the Jewish people overslept. They slept too late on that day, which is interesting. I'm not sure why. Maybe it was like we were too nervous or too scared or too something. So we fixed that by staying up all night to learn. Carolyn says, do these stones have anything to do with why we place stones at a gravesite? Our loved ones are in eternal sleep. Oh, beautiful. Carolyn, that's really beautiful. And I never thought of that. I don't know. But definitely could be a connection there. Why is it important for the rabbis to get up at midnight to study? Is this a mitzvah for all of us? Good question. There's an idea in Kabbalah especially that when things are at their darkest, at the midpoint of the night, when there's the least light and it seems like there's the least hope, that's the point at which the universe most needs our input. So that's where this practice comes from, where some of these Kabbalists wake up and do this thing called tikkun chatzot, literally fixing midnight, fixing the middle. So that's what Carolyn's referring to. So yeah, that goes back to some of our earlier sources we saw on the sheet about sleep, which kind of say, well, just get the minimum sleep you need to do good things like, the praying and the learning and whatever else, right? That minimizes the possibility. What about connecting with the divine through sleep, right? Richard says, do we sleep more in Shabbat? Oh, brilliant question. Yes, it's actually, it's even encoded into Jewish law that if it makes you happy, as part of your Shabbat practice, you should have a nice nap in the afternoon. So, which I take very seriously. Elaine says, truly, thank you. Torah, it is provocative that Torah scholars in general preferred learning to sleep, and that King David was lauded for getting up before all to sing God's praises. Right. Again, absolutely fair. There's definitely this, maybe this fear that, too much sleep is just laziness or waste of life. I'd like to end by saying, in this month of Kislev, let's as much as we can take the opportunity to at least get more in touch with how much sleep we actually need and want, and maybe improve the quality of our sleep. Maybe aim to think about, what is our experience of sleep? I mean, how can we make it an experience which makes us better people? As someone said beautifully on the chat before, which makes us, which is training us to be better people for our waking lives.